And here now to discuss are Zeke Miller, White House reporter for the Associated Press, and CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. Zeke, we didn't hear about impeachment last night.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, there's a line, Democrats and Republicans repeat a lot that there's a disconnect between Washington and the rest of the country. And I think that's true, when the president makes it about a lot of issues, but also here in the case of the Democrats who are running for president. The rank and file in Washington may be hankering for it. The members of the hardcore members of the party want it, but outside, Democratic candidates recognize that that is not something that is broadly popular among all Americans, so they need to win the White House. But also, even among Democratic primary voters, that is not the most important issue to them. They didn't bring it up. They mentioned the president certainly, but they weren't going out. They want to talk about health care. They want to talk about all the other issues that are important to them, climate change. Impeachment is not the most important issue to those voters.
One issue that did get a lot of play last night, David, was health care. And we saw a big distinction between Biden and some of the more progressive candidates on this particular issue.
Yeah, I thought that was his best moments right at the beginning, and then it started to deteriorate into a few other things. But he was able to say, look, what's the cost here? And obviously doing the Republicans and Trump a favor here to kind of paint Sanders and Warren to the left. I think something that Elizabeth Warren is going to have to answer, though, is this middle-class tax, not cut, but increase. She was asked by George Stephanopoulos about it. Biden had an opportunity to say, hey, Elizabeth Warren, you say costs are going to go down, but you never said middle-class taxes aren't going up. And I think that's potentially where she could run into a trouble spot. But at the same time, Bernie's taken a lot of the socialism load off of Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren, economic patriotism. Bernie Sanders, it's a train to Leningrad and socialism and all of that.
Yeah, and David, she's very good at kind of cloaking this socialism with a more patriotic tone.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly why she is increasing in the polls. And Bernie, sorry, a bit 2016, had his chance. You can blame the DNC. You can go down that route again. But it feels a little stale. He's a trendsetter, that they're talking about his issues, so to speak. But at this point, Elizabeth Warren, the one rising.
Yeah, Zeke, a lot of candidates, they went after Joe Biden, most notably Julian Castro. Was this effective?
It was certainly effective in getting the question of Joe Biden, the former vice president's age and fitness for office back into the national conversation. Did it make it for Julian Castro? Did that get him anywhere closer to the White House? Absolutely not. It probably had some backlash for him. It was the sort of thing that you saw the mainstream Democratic establishment sort of say that was a low blow. That was the sort of thing that was not the way you treat sort of an icon of the Democratic Party. But it did sort of inject the questions about Joe Biden's fitness for office, and those were questions that were going to come up, whether they came up, Castro brought them up, or others brought them up, or if he became the nominee, Donald Trump was certainly going to bring those questions to the fore. So there's an element of it. If Joe Biden can address them now, maybe that's the sort of thing that can actually help in the long run. But for Castro, he succeeded in getting some attention for himself, but it probably didn't get him any closer to that nomination.
And the problem is also he brought it in through the back door. He didn't go straight and just bring it up and say, look, this is a serious issue. We need to discuss in terms of generational issue.
I was surprised that they didn't aim more of their fire at Elizabeth Warren. She has been steadily rising in the polls. Zeke, was this an opportunity missed?
Going into the debate, there was that foreshadowing of this this big showdown between Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren. Warren's team has made clear for months that she's not going to strike first on anyone. She has ideas. She wants to have a conversation, a debate about ideas. She has her plans for everything, and her plan for debates in general is to sort of let her ideas speak for themselves and not go after her colleagues on stage. Nobody decided to take the fight to her, in part because she didn't strike back at them, but also because there were other sort of more powerful foils. Like David mentioned, going after Bernie Sanders is a way to, if you're in the pragmatic wing, you can have that argument with Bernie Sanders, and you don't need to go after necessarily Elizabeth Warren. So she may be the beneficiary of that for now. But the question is that bigger fight within the Democratic Party between the pragmatists and the progressives, how that one shakes out. She'll be brought down with Bernie Sanders if it gets decided the other way. If not, she will probably be the nominee as a result.
And she doesn't need to defend herself. Well, basically the reason she doesn't need to defend herself is because she really believes this stuff. She feels very authentic when she's talking about it. And she's a school teacher, so she's there to basically educate people on her view of economics with a number 2 pencil in hand, I'm sure.
Yeah, we heard some of that personal story last night from her. Zeke, you cover the White House for the Associated Press. Do you have a sense of how the White House feels about some of these candidates? What are you hearing?
Well, the broader Trump organization has made clear they intend to brand whomever the Democrat that emerges from this process as a socialist. They've made that. The president's made that clear. His campaign and the RNC have made that very clear. For everyone but maybe Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg or Amy Klobuchar, that's a pretty easy attack line. They've all embraced Medicare for All and some of those other more liberal proposals. That conversation has moved to the left over the last 4 years within the Democratic Party. That gets more complicated if it's Joe Biden, but there may be some other vulnerabilities. They're kind of hoping in a lot of ways that Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren emerges from this primary process. They think they know how to win that race and run that race. So that's sort of what their internal thinking is right now. That said, they have a lot of work to do. Getting their own base to come home and support the president. So they have a lot of work to do, but their confidence level is a lot higher if the Democratic primary is decided in that direction.
And finally tonight, just a few seconds left, but do y'all own record players?
I wish.
44 years ago, I might have owned a record player.
In all seriousness, though, what can we make of this big gaffe by Joe Biden?
Well, just real quick. I think it sums up everything. Joe Biden is talking about record players, and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party are posting TikTok videos or whatever they're doing on social media. It is such a disconnect. And it's kind of funny that Joe Biden actually said, wait, I didn't, he corrected himself and said, no, not television. And then he went, I mean record player. I'm like, wait, no, don't you mean it reverse? You don't mean record player, you mean television. Anyhow, it was, and somehow we ended up in Venezuela with Maduro. So I don't even understand where he was going with any of that.
Yeah, final word, Zeke.
Yeah, no, I'm not entirely sure where he was going with that. He had a pretty strong debate at the front, and it sort of faded down the stretch. So it'll be interesting to see come the next time around, the fourth of these 12 debates this cycle, if he can turn things around.
Yeah, much more to come. All right, Zeke and David, thank you both for